One of the great things about being an adult, especially at our amazing age and stage, is that you have more than likely had a time when you've had to just walk away from a job. Tell me about a time when you just said, you know what, this is it, I'm out.
Well, actually, there's been several times I've done that, so I'm not sure which one to reference here. At different stages of my life, I've left many a job, to be honest with you, for different reasons. I guess my most short-lived job, we were talking about this earlier, was actually working at a comedy club. I was in between jobs at the time. I think I was in my 20s. I'm sure I was, and looking around, trying to find something fun to do. I didn't want the typical 9 to 5. So I happened upon a job at a comedy club in Atlanta, and it was a waitress. I was like a cocktail waitress, and I thought it was going to be great. I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be great, tips and tons of fun. And then I realized it was not exactly what I had anticipated. So I threw up the fingers 2 days in and was like, I'm out. I don't even think I called or told him that I was quitting, to be honest with you, which is horrible, but it's what happened.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, that's a good way to get things warmed up, because today we're talking about quitting. Stay tuned.
This is Mikel-Claire.
And this is Trey.
And we are the couple of entrepreneurs. We're here to share with you our journey of successes and setbacks as we enter the world of entrepreneurship now that we no longer have 9 to 5s due to the new normal of the world and the pandemic.
Join us as we race the clock to start earning money, gain consistency, and overcome self-doubts and uncertainty as we search for our voices and obtain personal and financial growth.
So I talked about one of my times that I quit, but you sure didn't bring up your CompUSA quitting.
Oh yeah, definitely. Just like you, I have quit quite a few jobs and been fired from quite a few jobs, to be honest. It's just, you live your life. But the one that I remember telling you about was I worked at CompUSA one time, and I was a salesman, worked in the computer department, and I was pretty good. I was real good, actually, to tell you the truth. I was one of the top salesmen in the store. But then there was just this day I just came in and I just couldn't stop looking outside. I don't know if you've ever lived a beautiful Atlanta day, but it can get really spectacular outside. And I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm like, man, I'm stuck in this terrible place and a job that I'm not really feeling, and everything amazing is happening. And one of the guys on the sales floor that was like my supervisor at the time, it just kind of like been on me nonstop about, I don't know, finding some boxes or something really stupid that didn't matter. And I looked outside and I was like, yeah, today's the day. I'm out. And I stepped it right on out those doors and never looked back. It was a great decision because I was living in a place of misery, didn't like my job, and it forced me to have to do something quickly in order to feed myself and give me the opportunity to find something that was a lot better and a little bit more fulfilling.
So we both talked about like the way that we quit. We were a little younger then.
Oh yeah.
But we actually just up and walked out the doors. Let's be real.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of horrible in hindsight, but at the time it made perfect sense. So how do you quit a job or a situation? Like what are like some of your options for quitting?
Let me go back and just double down on what you said. Those methods of leaving, it's totally disrespectful and it's unprofessional, and there's no need to just walk out of a business like that. But like you said, I was like 21, 22 years old.
Unless, you're being harassed or something, there's some like circumstance where you should get out of there. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, then you need to stick it out and be professional. Well, not stick it out, but be professional in how you leave.
Exactly. Right. When you've come to that point where you're deciding, man, you know what, this might be it. I think you should ask yourself a couple of questions first. One of them is talking to your supervisor and asking if there's anything within the job that is of interest to you first that you can do in addition to what you're already doing. Maybe it'll help make the day better. If that doesn't work, then maybe find something within that company as well that you'd rather be doing. And then I think there's also an option to ask your supervisor if it's possible, especially nowadays, to work from home. A lot of times that can change how you feel about the job that you're currently at. It's not to put you on the spot, but is there any other thing that you can think of before you just, let the door hit you or the good Lord split you?
No, I think like what you said, if there's another opportunity that may be more fulfilling for you or something more of interest in whatever your area of expertise may be, or, you know, you want to grow into another area and you want to kind of maybe work for another team or something like that, I think that that's the best route to go, because then you can find like renewed interest. But I think what the ones that you said are perfect.
And depending on the relationship with your supervisor, especially with all these changing times and people downsizing, if there is a chance for your company to downsize, I'm not saying that it's a good opportunity for you, but it could be. Talk to your supervisor and plainly state, you know, if you all are going to downsize, you know, consider me on that list, because then you can qualify for either their severance package that they may or may not have. You can qualify for unemployment benefits, which are a lot different today due to COVID than they have been in previous times. I guess the whole purpose of this conversation is to figure out in a way the options that you have before you go out and pursue entrepreneurship full time. How do you feel about some of the things that I've said? Because I know you've currently have had to change up profession wise, and it's been a pretty big change up. Does any of that resonate, or am I just totally blowing smoke up people's behind?
I mean, my situation was a little different. There was no opportunity for growth. There was no opportunity to maybe have like a lateral move within the company. There is none of that. So I didn't have that opportunity.
Good.
So that wasn't even an option for me.
Okay.
And honestly, because of my situation where we had different people taking over the company, I had no interest in working for them. So I couldn't ask to be let go because that wasn't an option. And I'm sure they didn't want to pay unemployment.
Right.
So I had to make the decision whether or not I wanted to stay or leave.
Right.
And at that point, I did give notice.
Right.
Because that's just who I am. I am extremely professional. Mm-hmm. I did feel a sense of loyalty also in order to, because I had been there for 10 years, mm-hmm. To kind of see if they needed me to train somebody else or what they needed in those 2 weeks from me in order to keep going as a company.
Okay.
I gave myself way more credit because obviously I don't know why I thought they would stop moving all of a sudden just because I left. Mm. Yeah, in the end, I did walk away, but I did give notice. I gave 2 weeks so that, like I said, I could be professional and still not burn any bridges. Well, I did burn a couple bridges, but not because of that. So yeah, what you're saying is completely rational, and it makes perfect sense if you have the opportunity to make those kind of changes within your company. But then there are those people like me that just that's the option.
I appreciate your honesty and just being candid about it, because I certainly don't want to be presumptive when it comes to something as important as changing professions, and especially during a time such as COVID when some people just don't have that option and choice. And I'm glad your situation is different, because I wouldn't want anybody to even remotely assume that the methods that I said are the only ones that can be chosen. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about changing professions or finding new ones as a result of, you know, the world changing what you were doing before. But then you also brought up something that also carries a lot more weight today and should be considered a little bit more during these times of COVID. And that is leaving a profession for other reasons such as happiness or pursuing entrepreneurship. Do those still carry weight during these turbulent times of everything from social injustice to being sick walking down the street? Like, is it being selfish to think that maybe you should leave your job and your current opportunity because you're not happy or because you just want to do something else?
I think leaving a job, regardless of the times and the situation, is all about perspective. Some people are able to take bigger risks. They're just like risk takers in general, or they don't necessarily have to have that safety net in order to keep moving forward or try something new. I just think it depends on the person. I think it depends on your situation and your circumstances. I think everybody is capable of creating some type of business, some type of other income that they may not have pursued in the past, but you know, it is a risk. Not everybody can afford that. Not
Right.
everybody has the benefit of 3 months worth of rent sitting in the bank. You know what I mean? So it just depends on the situation. I wouldn't encourage anybody. Oh, it's hard. It's a hard,
Right?
it's a
It
hard
is.
thing.
It is.
I don't know. Cause I didn't think I could. I mean, I actually quit my job before we knew the pandemic was going to be the way
Right.
that it is. Let's just put that out there,
Yeah.
because that's not why I quit my job. I'm glad I did, because I didn't have to worry about going in and risk my health and safety and all of that. But it takes a certain kind of person
Yeah.
and a certain kind of circumstance.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on that?
There's that old mantra that, what is it, like, ready never happens. You're never going to be ready for whatever it is that you're going to do, especially if it's a big change. That's one of those bumper sticker slogans to me that it just sounds good to say, but then when you apply it to your own life and there's consequences based off of your actions, especially if you have people that depend on you, like, I don't know, maybe you have aging parents that live with you, especially if you have kids, or you're just taking care of just a large family unit in general. Those decisions that you make are going to have rippling effects. So that whole "you're never ready till you're ready" thing, it sounds good, but I completely understand those people that are hesitant and be like, nah, I just can't do that. It's just not right. And maybe you do have to wait for another time. And let's also, look at the world for what it is right now. And there is a lot of massive economic change going on right now. Having that type of cavalierness, if that's a word, that's the only thing that is a word, being that cavalier about just changing jobs and going a totally different direction may not be the best option, because I can guarantee one thing, and that is that there will be some difficulties. The level of difficulties is obviously going to be, different for different people, but it is not going to be an easy transition for 99% of the people. There probably will be that 1% that it just was, yay. But for the vast majority of us, there's going to be consequences. But if you do feel like now is the time, I wouldn't be mad if you took that leap either. There's another saying that I love, and it's God hates a coward. For me, it works well for me. And I do think that if you put forth the effort and live a life without fear and being bold, I do think you can be rewarded as long as you do what you're supposed to do. Whatever decision you make, I get. There is no right or wrong answer that's like chiseled in stone regarding that decision. If you do quit, what do you do? What's the next step after the paperwork has been signed or you have walked out that door?
I think I don't know. I think for me, I was in shock for a good month. And you feel, if depending on how long you've been in a position, or if you're used to a 9-to-5 or you're not used to being unemployed, I think there's a period of just like shock. If you don't have another position or income lined up, there might be some anxiety. It's kind of like dealing with the aftermath of the decision that you just made. So there's different types of people, and different types of people are going to deal with different situations differently. Mm-hmm. So there are those like myself that are going to need like a time frame or a time period to kind of figure out what's next.
Okay.
If you don't have another job lined up,
right.
Figure out what you want to do with your life. I mean, that's like a big question that people have all the time. Right. And I think I struggle with that too. Like, what is next for me? What is going to make me happy? What is my purpose in this world? Mm-hmm. So trying to kind of figure out those things, you got to give yourself time for that. Yeah. And then after that, dude, you got to, especially if you're like me, you got a limited bank account. Right. You got to figure out what's next. You got to figure out what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. Like, are you going to start a business? Are you going to look for another job? Mm-hmm. Are you going to research other opportunities? How are you going to manage your time and not fall into sitting on the couch and watching, let's see, what was I watching? Like The Bachelor or something. I know that's a guilty pleasure. But I'm just saying, you just got to really figure out what is next. And I know I keep saying that, but bottom line, you can't just sit on your butt. Right. So, I mean, because you have left a position or two in your time. Oh, yeah. What do you do after you quit?
I think I've been in a very interesting and unique position regarding leaving jobs. My old profession my job would stop once the project was over. So in a sense, I was laid off, every couple of months per se. Technically, I was technically laid off every couple of months. So my perspective on it is a little bit different because it's happened so frequently. And I do know from the lifestyle that I have lived regarding that your mindset is like the most key thing. Knowing that this is just a temporary thing. And in every situation regarding that during my previous job profession, that was the case. It was just a temporary problem that was going to change, and I had the power to change it, and I had the skills and the know-how and the belief in myself to move on to what the next project was going to be. I also didn't have any shame collecting unemployment when I was doing production and working in Hollywood back then. Like, no shame. It's one of those things where I was like, well, I've paid into the system. So if I'm in between jobs as an independent contractor and a freelancer, then yeah, during these times down, I'm gonna go ahead and get unemployment. I bring that up now because unemployment's a lot different today than it was for me back then because of the COVID bonuses. I think in a lot of states, the bonuses is as high as an additional like $600 per week per check. And I know that's not baller money by no means, but if you need something to survive on, depending on what your situation is and how big your family is and how bad your debts are, I mean, it could be enough to float you by until you figure out what your next move is going to be. I think it's key to understand that it's not going to be the end of the world. That job or whatever it is that you were doing did not define you. Even if it's something that you love, it still doesn't define who you are as a person. And there will be other opportunities that you can strike on given the circumstances. Now, there will be difficulties because we're in some economic strain, and you'll certainly be uncomfortable because there is a very real opportunity that you'll have to do and pursue something that might not be on the direct path to your goal. You might have to make a detour. Now is the best time ever when it comes to researching and understanding new ways to earn new skill sets due to online courses, YouTube, social media groups, connecting, reaching out to people, asking questions. I mean, there's a lot more opportunities today than there was, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago to figure out what those new options are going to be. But I think the very first thing is get your mind right. Don't fall into despair, and use your time to the best of your ability, trying to figure out what that next move is going to be.
Well, I think you mentioned an interesting thing, though, the fact that it's really about mentality, because I had a 9-to-5 job for 10 years. So for me, I had a very stable and steady paycheck twice a month. And for you, you had a paycheck, but your jobs, like you mentioned, were temporary.
Right.
So, and I've done temp work in the past many, many moons ago, but like I said, for 10 years, I had the same job. So my mentality about leaving one job and being able to get another one, or there being another opportunity, is completely different. I have a completely different mindset about it.
Right.
So that's something to take into consideration too, depending on who the person is and what their work history may or may not be. They may have a different mentality about how quickly you're able or capable to create more income.
Right. I think this might be a pretty good spot to kind of like put a pin in it. I know we can make this go a little bit longer. Do you want to keep talking about a couple of more things? Or?
Well, the only other thing that I wanted to touch upon was when to quit one entrepreneurial endeavor and find another, because that's something that's specific to maybe somebody that's already on this path or this journey.
Okay.
And maybe they need to switch to something else because, not everything is going to work initially. So what do you suggest in that case?
Okay. Oh, man. All right. You guys ready? Here comes the cold water. As an entrepreneur, you're going to fail. The level of that failure is going to be different from person to person. I'm not saying that to be discouraging to people. I just want to tell you the truth, because entrepreneurs are kind of like explorers in a sense. You go out, you take risks. You try to see if there's a way that you can profit from it or help people or grow your business from those experiments. But then there's sometimes you get to a point where you have to decide if I'm spending too much time too much energy, too many resources for a return that's large enough for me to continue down that path. And maybe I need to stop doing this and pursue something else. I'm not saying quit being an entrepreneur, but there may be a different avenue that you need to go by. Let's just use the area that I'm concentrating more, which is internet marketing in general. Internet marketing is a very broad term. Internet marketing can include everything from e-commerce to, which includes like Shopifying and drop shipping. It can include affiliate marketing. It can include social media marketing regarding selling products and services. So let's just say, you tried to start up a Amazon FBA, which is fulfillment by Amazon, which is an exact course that I actually went down the path of, and I did not find success. It was just not something that resonated with me. And I realized that the effort that it was going to take in order for me to find success, I wasn't willing to give for that particular project. Not that I was lazy, I just didn't want to do it for that. And I had already made some investments in time, investments of money, learning a skill set that I'm probably not going to use. And then I was like, okay, well, I still want to become an entrepreneur. I still want to deal in internet marketing. I think I'm just going to have to change the direction of where my goal is going to be and just shift it a little bit to the right and shift it to another or to the left, and then just find something else within that wheelhouse. So that was a bit of a minor change, but it was still tough to come to that realization that this isn't going to work, because you want to feel that all of that effort and time, and especially money that has been invested, is going to something that, that's going to produce fruit, that's going to grow fruit that you can eat from the efforts of all of that hard work. But sometimes it just doesn't happen that way. But if it's just moving from one field of entrepreneurship to another field of entrepreneurship, I think that is a very real reality that all of us who are entrepreneurs have to realize, that there may be still other options within that field. With that being said, and us going down this path together, me and you, with some internet marketing entrepreneurship, have you thought about the possibility of maybe shifting directions and going, or has it already happened? Have you ever gone down one endeavor and then realized this might not be it, and then decided to go down a different path?
Well, as far as like past things that I have attempted, I did mention it. I think it was actually the last episode. I had thought that Shopify was going to be something that I had interest in. I was like, oh yeah, I love, hair ties and headbands and hair clips, or, whatever it was that I was coming up with. So I thought it was going to be fun. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. People are going to love it. But I didn't know, all the ins and outs of everything that I needed to know about, like driving traffic and the things that it was going to encompass. So at the time, like you mentioned, I just didn't have the motivation or the willingness to put forth effort that I needed in order to really kind of succeed and figure out what I needed to do in that specific endeavor. And even now, as much as you are, and I say you in general, are supposed to believe in what it is that you're doing, believe that it's going to work, believe that everything is going to come out kittens and rainbows and roses and unicorns. I still have it in the back of my head, not everything succeeds. And there is a slight possibility that this could fail. Right. And what do you do in that situation? So, in the back of my head, I'm telling myself, you may have to change paths a little bit. You may have to choose a different product. You may have to do the offers all over again. You know what I mean? So I'm not giving up hope that what I'm doing is going to work. But I think it's always good to have other options maybe in your mind, like a just in case. And I know that sounds kind of bad because, if you have a plan A, and plan A is your goal and what you want it to happen and have succeed, then there is no plan B, is what people say. But I think it's okay to have a plan B sometimes in the back of your mind, just in case. I know that sounds horrible, but it's my reality. So that's my thoughts about it. But sometimes, like you said, sometimes it's time to quit one thing and move on to another.
I'll say one more little thing before we tie this up, especially when dealing with the field that we're going into with internet marketing. And we deal a lot with testing. Testing is a very big thing. And if you're not familiar with testing, especially when it's dealing with advertising, is that you'll have one advertisement saying one thing, and then you'll test it, which means comparing one ad to another ad. And then the ad that is the most successful between those two is the one you continue to spend money on. And you keep doing that process over and over and over again. You're constantly comparing one to the other. And when you do that, you kind of unwillingly understand that something's not going to work. And you kind of understand that I have to stop doing this because I'm losing money. And it tempers you a little bit because you're constantly comparing something that's working to something that's not working. And it's just a part of the nature of internet marketing. You have to remove what isn't working. And you start doing it enough, it just becomes second nature. It's not as dreadful of a decision of like, oh my gosh, I have to decide if I'm going to keep doing this job. You'll get to a point where you see it as like a testing method. It's like, okay, well, this just isn't working. I'm wasting time. I'm wasting resources. I need to stop this as soon as I can, and then go with whatever it is that is already working. So there is a little bit of a silver lining when regarding the mentality of when to let something go. So I think how you're feeling is completely normal and natural. But I do think that as you do it more and more, you kind of like get some thicker skin regarding letting stuff go that doesn't work. Speaking of things that may not work, we're talking about ending this show with a pin in it. We've tested it and we are not going any further regarding this topic. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are the couple of entrepreneurs. Smash that subscribe button. Tell your friends, tell your families. We're over here talking money. We're talking about victories, failures, defeat, quit, finding new jobs, better opportunities, testing out the ability to get paid. That's it for now.